Mr. Bob Negen, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you back here on the Footwear Retailer Podcast this time around. We've done some other ones in the past, but this is a brand new show and excited to have you on as one of the first guests.
Well, great. And, Pete, I think this is going to be an incredibly valuable podcast for shoe retailers. And so I'm honored that you brought me on. And, as always, I think we're going to have a good conversation that have a lot of value for your listeners.
Absolutely. Bob, let's dig right into it. I know that, sales, one of the big things that I love about the work that we've done together over the past and everything that WhizBang has done for over 25 years now, Bob, right?
I know. I started when I was 7.
But, having a sales focused culture and working through all these things, a lot of times in business, we kind of think to ourselves, well, customers don't want to be sold to.
Right.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, of course. So let's back it up one step even and just come from, in order to be successful. Now, I'm going to talk specifically to shoe retailers here because, I can buy shoes anywhere. And my Facebook feed and my Instagram feed is filled with shoe brands. And a lot of them look good, they're cool. And so Zappos and Amazon. And so, it could be argued, I don't want to argue this, but it could be argued that shoes can be seen as a commodity.
Yeah.
Right. And so an independent shoe store is not going to be able to compete on price. They're not going to be able to compete on breadth of selection. So where does an local independent brick and mortar retailer compete? You compete on the experience. And the experience starts with caring. And one of the places that caring shows up is on the floor. So yes, to your question, so often people think of selling as being rude, manipulative, pushy, psychological trickery. And, that comes from the old stereotypic used car salesman. Yeah. But, if you care and you get out there and somebody comes in your store and you really care about their experience, you want to make sure that you get them exactly the right thing. When I teach selling, we have, as we have an online sales platform called the Retail Sales Academy. And I teach this concept that I developed called the perfect purchase. So the perfect purchase, and the reason that I came up with that concept is because I've been through all the other sales trainers, retail sales trainer, and it's all kind of manipulative, right? And I remember being at a live program and the guy was telling of the story about how he was selling a watch in a jewelry store and the woman didn't need the watch. The woman didn't want the watch, but he sold her 3 watches and he was really proud of it. And I just felt kind of dirty listening to the story, right? It was like, no, that's not how it's done.
Yeah.
And so most people think of, when they think of selling, they think that they see it from the perspective of the business owner. And I believe that if you want to approach your customers from this experiential, service-driven, heart of service perspective, when that happens, what you do is you come at it from them. A business sells, a customer purchases. And so when you focus on the customer and you focus on getting them to the perfect purchase, it by its very nature means you have to get out and skillfully engage them. You have to ask good questions. You have to make sure that they understand you're on their team. And it all really does come from caring, right? I care. You come in my store, I care that you have an amazing experience and that when you leave, you feel really good about what you bought, about maybe what you didn't buy, about the person you talked to, the experience you had. And that's the opportunity for local brick and mortar retailers like your listeners. It just showing up and throwing some shoes on the shelves and having a rack of socks next to I'd like you to talk about this for a second.
Sure.
But this idea of expectations are up, loyalty is down. If you give somebody a great experience, they might come back. If you give somebody a lousy experience, they won't come back. I mean, do you see that in your stores, Pete?
Absolutely. I mean, you have one chance, and that one chance is the chance that they're there now. Even if they've been in your store before and you happen to screw that one chance up, the next time they're in because they were loyal, they're
Wow.
not going to be after that. Like
No, you
they
don't have
used to give you
you
a
don't
chance
have
or
two
two, right?
choices. No. Right.
Like they used to say, "Oh, well, give like something was wrong or whatever the
Right.
case is." They don't anymore.
Right. No, that's
It's
exactly
too
right.
easy to go elsewhere.
When you think about value, people value different things. Convenience is
Hmm.
absolutely that something that people value.
For sure.
And, I'm sorry, but Shootopia is never going to be well, it could be argued as convenient because they walk in and they get the thing and they walk out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could sit here on a computer and order all the shoes I ever need. So convenience is a value, price is a value, but experience is also a value. And so, to your point, the experiential value has to far outweigh price and convenience if you are to do this thing.
Yeah. I work with a lot of my clients in the footwear industry
Yeah.
and outside. And I came up, I have this model that I like you, I like to come up with models and
Right.
frameworks and things like this. So this model that I've had for quite a while for our stores and I help other people with, it's called the heart of, and then
Right.
you
I
plop
remember
in,
that. But
right?
go
Yeah.
deeper. I
Yeah.
do remember that. Yeah.
So I've got this one for Shootopia, and it's called the Heart of Shootopia, and it looks
Right.
three circles, and put together,
You
and the
like the three
idea,
circles too, I know.
and
It
from that,
works.
right at the heart of that is what our promise, and the
Right.
promise is what we're promising our clients, and
Yeah.
and we're promising our clients that we're going to help them look great and feel fantastic.
Yeah.
That's the feeling we want to give them when they leave the store, right? So, and then around those three circles is how we actually bring them to the center of the
Right.
heart. And that's all their process, our sales process, our
Right.
questioning, all the things that you're talking
Right.
about. But the feelings that I'm trying to derive through that is what I call ooh, ah, and aha.
Uh-huh.
And the
Tell me
ooh
more.
is, ooh, I look
Yeah.
pretty good. Like when you
Uh-huh.
get them on, right? The ah is, ah, those
Right.
feel fantastic. Look
Right.
good, feel fantastic. That gives them the aha moment where you finally say, I finally found the perfect pair.
Right.
And when you do that, you go to the till happy
Right.
and they walk out and they look back at the Shootopia sign and they're like, you know what? Shootopia is my favorite shoe store.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Can I add one other thing to this?
Yeah.
Is this idea of empathy. So, yes, if they walk out, like you said, if they walk out looking good, feeling good, and all those things, that's great. But what you implied was it's about the product. And don't get me wrong, it
Oh, no.
is always about the product. If you sell them a shoe that doesn't fit, it's not a perfect purchase.
Yeah, it's
Or if
not.
you sell them a shoe that makes them look awful, it's not a perfect purchase. But there's also how do they feel about the experience? So when we teach, so there's a couple of quotes to think about. One is this idea, the more you know, the better you serve. The better you serve, the more you'll sell. There's this thought of, you want to hire people and build a culture where there's deep empathy. So
Mhm.
when somebody comes in, you're really listening, you're on their team. And this is the beautiful thing that independent brick and mortar retailers like you and your listeners, this is the beautiful thing that you have. Independent retail is the most human of businesses. I'm sure, fast food you're running through, but
Yeah.
there's not, fast food. It's like, hey, you want a Big Mac? And, here, ding, 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 ding. They're face to face, but they're transactional.
Yep.
If you go into a great brick and mortar retail store, but, and it doesn't happen in big box stores because they just don't think that way, but they go into Shootopia or the stores of any of your listeners, you have, as an independent shoe store owner and your employees, have the ability to change someone's day, right? When we teach the 6 steps to the perfect purchase, the first step is greetings, right?
Mhm.
And the greeting is not "Can I help you?" because that's about product. right? It's not, what can I sell you? No, no, no. It's, we warm words of welcome. Hi, the weather's great. I mean, just all we're trying to do in this first part of the transaction is establish the fact that we're two human beings. And I am here to help you get what you want. I am here for you. And, so many people, they come in, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got problems. Everybody's got issues. Somebody comes into the store, they got to buy shoes for their kids, and the kids are in a bad mood. All these things. There's so many opportunities for independent retailers and their team members to be really good human beings. And so I guess what I wanted to do with that long that long little ramble there was to say, I agree with you 100%. But if you can layer on that, really, really, we're on the same team. My job right here is to help you feel good about yourself and all these things. It just takes the whole thing to another level.
I love that. And, that's part of the outer ring structure. So we have those
Right.
three circles. The outer ring structure is the process, right? And the process is the questioning and all those things of
Right.
understanding and empathy. And so, yeah, absolutely. It's such a big thing that we actually are good humans.
It's our competitive advantage. I've been thinking about this a lot, and you and I, this is what we do.
Yeah, yeah.
And for the people who are listening to, for your listeners, so I know Pete's business not really well, but kind of well. Pete was in our Platinum Mastermind group for a while, so I know his business. And this whole idea of you just have it's the competitive advantage, right? It really is. So I created a model. Actually, it's not a model, it's an acronym. But what would WWMCW, what would my customer want?
Yeah.
And so when we start to think about, and it really is, it's tied in. I mean, it's really similar to your model, only your model is more specific. Is, if you look at your business and make your strategic decisions based on that question, what would my customer want? And then start building your business around the answers to those questions, all of a sudden you'll do things like hire the right people, because you need the right people to have a great culture. You're going to train them so that they're comfortable on the floor. You're going to train them how to sell to the rest of your model. You're going to have, the right models in stock, in all sizes, in all colors, so that people don't come in and go, they don't have my size again, all of these things. So when you start getting focused on WWMCW, the fact that you care so much starts to drive you to becoming a better merchant. And that's really, I started to go on that a little earlier. Right now, the world is changing so much. AI has made it so easy for online brands like shoe brands to target the right people in the right size. You like red, they're going to serve up red. You like red heels, they're going to serve up red heels to you. It gives other brands a lot of competitive advantages, but in that competitive advantage needs to be offset with our caring, and that caring shows up not just as an emotional thing, but that caring shows up in skills. One of the things that I love about you is you're a good merchant, and if you're not good anymore, you're just not going to survive. So it's you had this quote, your passion for your product is not enough to make you profitable. And it's never more true than it is right now. So, if you're not serious about being a good retailer, yeah, might as well leave now, because you might have another year in you, but it's going to be a problem.
It's interesting. I talk to a lot of different business owners outside of the footwear industry too. And I've talked to a few recently where they've said, well, I've done it this way. And I'm getting back to your framework a little bit here, but I've done it this way I've been doing this for 25 years. Like, And so I've got the framework that I wrote my little book on called the 5 Ps, right? Which
Uh-huh.
is your promise. And you align your promise to your product, your process, and your people so that you can have the right amount of profit, which
Right.
the promise is the same as WWMCW,
Right.
right? And so the promise is, what are you promising them? So first of all, you have to know what they want, right?
Right.
And then you develop all of your systems around what they want.
Right. And
And
absolutely.
what I've seen so often lately, Bob, and tell me if you're seeing it too, is that people say, "Well, this is the way we've always done it," but it's not working.
Well,
So
no, and that's exactly right. And I'll just share, so now I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to your
yeah,
listeners.
yeah, yeah,
I'm going to encourage everyone to, not just you as the business owner, but to get all of your team members. And I used to do this when I was in retail. For 19 years, I had the kite store. Nobody needs a kite, right? Nobody needs a kite. And so, I would walk our downtowns, and I would always, at the beginning of the season, I would send out our team members. I'd give them $10 and say, if somebody sells you something, you can spend this, meaning that they get out from behind the counter and they engage you and they're cool about it. And, nobody. And so, what I do, Pete, is, this is what I do. This is what you do too. So whenever I go to a town, I shop, right? I love shopping, independent retailers. And, it drives me crazy. I have this thing, this model, how in the old cartoons they would have I call it the engagement-o-meter, right? It's a ring, ring,
yeah,
ring.
yeah,
It's got the arm. And, if I were to shop a town, like if I were to go into downtown Grand Haven right now, lovely downtown, it's only 4 blocks
yeah,
long. But if I were to go in, 80% of the experiences I would have would be basically nothing,
yeah.
right? I mean,
Help
no
yourself.
engagement.
Yeah,
10% there would be some engagement. Somebody would look up and say something. But aside from my old business, there's about 4 stores, including my old store, which I'm proud of, the Mackinac Kite Company, that would actually get out on the floor, engage you, try to get you to a perfect purchase. So yes, this whole idea of doing things the way that they've always been done is no longer going to work. And it drives me crazy when I go into a store that somebody clearly has spent a lot of time and money and thought into branding. You ever go into these stores, it's like, man, this store is beautiful. Somebody spent a lot of money, and then there's no service,
the
right?
service isn't there.
Like, come on, somebody come sell me something.
It.
And to your point, so we'll sort of go backwards again, but there's these events that happen that call the herd. And I hate to say that, it sounds so mercenary, but when the malls came, independents got hurt. But guess what? A lot of them survived. Walmart, there were towns saying, we won't let Walmart in our town because it's going to kill our downtown. My feeling has always been, if you can't compete, you should not be in the game, right? So I've never been sympathetic to that. So then there was Walmart, then there was Amazon, then there was COVID. And I really think that right now we're at another one of those inflection points, that AI is creating another kind of sort of extinction event for independent retail. And so the people who are talking the way that you're talking, are not willing to change, are not willing to, really get focused on the customer experience, they're not going to make it. But this is the cool thing, and this is what, you and I agree on. But the people who get serious about your model, about WWMCW, the people who get really serious about that are going to kill it. I mean, in a good way. I'll just share something. So I'm not going to say the industry, but on our WhizBang Retailers Facebook group, somebody came on and they said, they just went on this screed talk about Karens and, how terrible the season was and how terrible their customers were. And somebody else from the same industry came on and said the same thing. So it was kind of I had to kind of, hey guys, easy, easy, right? Now, having said that, two people in our Platinum Mastermind group are in the same industry. When they came in after the holidays, they were like, we have never had a better season. I mean, and so it's the difference between somebody doing business the way that we're talking about doing it and somebody who's doing business hoping, opening the doors and hoping that things happen the right way. So,
Do you find, Bob, getting back to what will my customers want and understanding the promise? And this is one of the things, like, people have done what I call guiding principles work, right?
right, right,
They've done it, but they may have done it a long time ago and
right.
they think they've done it recently, but they haven't. And we're recording this here at the turn of the calendar here into the new
Yeah.
year. And it's like, this is the kind of time where we're starting to think about stuff and looking at stuff. And how often do you suggest going through? Because I have my feelings, but I'm interested to know, how often do you suggest really digging down, not just looking at your guiding principles, your mission, your statement, your promise, that kind of stuff, but how often would you suggest actually diving down into it?
Well, so the first thing is I would say, Pete, is that most people don't, right? Most of the retailers
I
that
know.
we work with, and even successful ones, right? Even multi-store operators, multi-million dollar operators, they're just doing business,
That's crazy.
right? They're just doing business, and you can do business successfully that way. I mean, if you're a really tight merchant, if you order correctly and you've got a good assortment and all those things, but that's different than what you're talking about. Who are we? So now there's a couple of different parts to that answer, but the first thing is, at least once a year.
Yeah.
So we just got done here for our company, WhizBang Retail
Mhm.
Training. We just got done with 2 full days of planning. The first was our EOS planning with our EOS implementer, and the second was with our whole team. And so this is one of the things that we love about EOS is it keeps bringing you back to your core values, your mission. It keeps bringing you back to. So to your question, the first thing that I would say is at least once a year. I mean, everybody should have an annual planning meeting with their team. Hey, what are we thinking about this year? Ask some questions. Another model that I created is called ADD, and we talked about it on your other
We did.
podcast. And it's an acronym for ask, discuss, decide.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have your team decide everything with you, but you certainly want their input on things. So, an ADD could be say, hey, what do you think we stand for? And if they don't know, that's a good answer, right? It's an answer that says something. If they say, wow, we're all about the customer, good, you can build on that. So if you just Google that sort of thing, they can come up with exercises. But I think that when you have that guiding principle, that guiding statement, those core values, it allows people, it A, attracts the right people
Yeah.
to you, and B, it keeps people focusing on doing things the way that you want them done.
For us, those guiding principles are part of everything we do. I
Yeah,
mean,
of
it's
course.
how we built our entire culture, our entire team. It's how we, everything we do in product alignment and people alignment, and I mean, and that's what I like about the what would your customers want, because you do need to reach out to your customers. You do need to ask your team. You do need to ask your suppliers. You do need to ask the people that are in your sphere of influence, so that you make sure that those kind of things are honed in.
Right.
And that's what I find so often. Like you said, there's a lot of people that don't even have these sort of documents. But the next step is, when was the last time you even looked at
Right.
them? And how are we taking that into our culture so that we can create the culture that we want, and give the clients, the customers, what they want? Or else, without that, we don't have a business. We're talking to leaders here on this podcast for the
Right.
most part.
Exactly.
And I'm saying to the leaders here listening, this is your job. You need to communicate with clarity everything around this. And if you don't even have it for yourself, how can you expect your team to do this?
So this is perfect. So Pete, can I make a pitch here?
Please.
Our company, WhizBang Training, we created a new online educational platform called Brilliance, retailbrilliance.com. And one of the things that we're most excited about for retailers is the ability to create a video based, or it could be video based, it could be text based, but video is really the most powerful medium, a video based training program that is assignable and trackable. Because to your point, so you've got 2 stores, Pete, but I know that in the shoe wear industry, there's lots of people who have multiple stores.
Lots.
And so the story that I always tell in Mackinac City, Michigan, Mackinac City is a party town. I mean, it's a summertown party town. And so I give the example of closing the store. So to me, one of the signs of operational excellence is the open and closing checklists are done to standard, done perfectly every day, no matter what, right? And then what I found was that when some people closed, that they didn't learn it correctly. And you know why? Is because the assistant manager wasn't teaching people how to close the way that I wanted them to close. He was teaching them how to close so they could get out of there as quickly as possible to get to the bar, right? So it was like, okay, so what is trading? Trading is establishing your standards and communicating them clearly in the same way, with the same passion, your passion, so that everybody in the organization is getting the same information the same way, so that there's that consistency, because that's what people want. They don't want to come into your store and have a great experience one time and a lousy experience the next time. They want to come into Shootopia and know that they're going to leave feeling right. And so and that's really one of the things that we were very, very intentional about building into Brilliance, because if you're going to have a great culture, you have to have a great training program. That game of telephone, word of mouth, is not a training process. Well, it is, but it's not a good training process.
Yeah, and I love the Brilliance package as well, Bob. And I know right now we're back, and we've been in and out of
Right,
the WhizBang sales training methodologies
right,
over the years. And you're in the training business, and when people have heard things over and over again, it gets a little bit tired. But then we move out, and then we come back in and redo it
right,
again in a couple of years. So every
right,
couple of years, we roll it back through for
right,
anybody who hasn't heard it, because repetition is the mother of skill.
right, right.
And to hear things over and over again, all of a sudden now it's just an understanding of this is how we do things.
Well, and there's this thing called a forgetting curve too. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a psychological truth, right? This has been studied. But when information is reinforced, so think of it as this way, right? So the forgetting curve is very shallow
Hmm.
when the information is reinforced. That's why part of what we do with our retail sales academy, which is housed on Brilliance, I don't want to confuse all these things, but we have a whole library of videos that can be sent out every week, right? 10-minute video. Keep your head in the game. Keep your head in the game. Keep your head in the game. So that's what the purpose of that is, to shallow out that forgetting curve. Because the problem that so many people have called me, hey, I want to bring you in for sales training, and it's like, well, great, it's going to be $10,000 a day, but I don't recommend it. Right? Save your money, because if I come in, everyone will be excited for a couple of weeks and you'll see a bump in sales.
And
And if
then,
your team's big enough, you'll pay for my fee. But really, that's not what you want. What you want, to your point, is you want a culture where everybody understands what to do. So, do you know Cam White?
I don't.
So Cam White, he's now a rep in the shoe business, but he had a comfort shoe store in Austin. And this is a long time ago. This is many, many years ago. But Cam came to me, he was a client, and, I got to know him, and he came to me at some shoe event, and he said, Bob, he says, I got to tell you this. And so he hired somebody, and his team came to him and said, they're not a good fit. He was so happy because what did that mean? It meant that he had created the culture. And the culture was self reinforcing in that when he tried to inject somebody who wasn't culturally compatible, his team gave him the boot. And
I love it.
he was thrilled. I was thrilled for him. So,
And I think that's one of the things most small business owners want, Bob, is this idea around I shouldn't have to make every decision. And when you start building that culture, I like to use the phrase decisions should be made at the lowest possible level of the
yes,
organization. And that time it happened, right? It was Cam. Cam
Cam,
didn't
yeah,
make that decision. People
his
down
team
the
made his
accountability
decision.
chart made that
Yeah,
decision, right? It was made at the lowest possible level because they knew what had to happen at that
right,
level. And that's what we want for our businesses. And I think that's the idea here behind creating a business where you move from making those decisions to the owner's box, right? Putting it
right,
into EOS terminology.
right,
So we're moving from the operational box to the owner's box and letting some of the other people handle that. And whether it's a cultural fix like that, or whether it's an operational fix like turning the lights off and closing the store properly, things
right,
need to be done without your involvement as the owner.
right. So and this is kind of fun. So one of our clients, Misha Seto, she's got her training on brilliance, and she's got, I think, 13 stores. But and she was in the mastermind, and she told the story. She said, "Oh, I'm just making videos." And so, I mean, a video could be made like this, but she was in every store. This is how you turn on the stereo. This is where the alarms are. All of these things that all when people don't know how to do it, it detracts from the customer experience. And it's all the things that if they don't know how to do it, they send a text to the manager, to the owner. And so when all of that stuff gets taken care of, your team members have the mental capacity to get out on the floor and serve your customers, and you get the opportunity to have that mind freedom to do the higher level stuff that's really important.
Bob, I'm a certified exit planner and I help people get their business
Yes,
ready for sale,
exactly.
right? So when you were telling me this story, I'm thinking, this is exactly one of the things for all of you who are thinking down the road of exiting in the next 2 to 5 years. This is the stuff you need to do, because when you can say, listen, this store runs without me, everything's on video, everything's documented, the process is done. When the
Right.
process is done, then it adds so much more value to the business from an outside person's perspective. It's like, oh, I don't have to know what's in this person's head. It's already out of their head, onto video, into documentation. And there's so many great things. We talked a little bit about AI earlier.
Yeah.
There's so many great ways. Once that video is created, a transcription done, pop it into ChatGPT or one of the different versions of AI that's going to produce the catalog of information, house it on some sort of format, whether it's Google Drive or Dropbox or any of the different ways that it
Or
can be,
brilliance.
or Brilliance, that it can be accessible, right?
Right.
And now we've got this whole platform that whoever's in the owner's box has underneath them. That's the operational structure. And when you have that in front of you and available to whomever may take your store over down the road, think of how much more valuable that is.
100%. So let's go back to it's another way that I teach this whole thing: mindset, skill set, structure.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the right mindset, if you don't have a growth mindset, you're dead in the water. I mean, it's almost impossible for you to become successful if you think that your customers are the enemy, if you think you're not good enough. I mean, we don't need to go into all the
No.
mindset, but a growth mindset naturally leads to skill acquisition, right?
Yep.
And so that becomes, this idea of becoming a retail professional. You're good, right? It's no longer about, I love interior design, I love shoes. It's now about, I love being a hot shit retailer, right? I love being good. I remember when Susan came to work for us. Susan's my wife and partner. She was a department store executive. When she started showing us this stuff, all these skills that she learned at department stores, it was like, oh, I was just eating it. I was like, oh, this is what I needed, right? I mean,
Yep.
that's what took us from being just some guys who are grinding to, a really, really great business. But then once you have the skill set, then you can start to build the structure, right? You can't build a training program if you don't know what a standard is. You can't build a training program if you haven't figured out what your culture is, what your mission is, what your core values are. You can't build a marketing plan if you don't know anything about marketing. You can't build an open to buy if you don't know what open to buy is. But so you have to have the skill set to be able to build the structure. But once you build the structure, that's where freedom comes from, right? That's where you get to, well, Maureen, somebody who was in the mastermind.
Yeah.
She joined the mastermind and she was a hot mess. And after just 1 year of sort of applying all these things, she went to Italy for a month and basically, don't call me unless there's blood or smoke. And that's the growth that is possible from what you teach, from what we teach. It's a path. So many people want the results, but they don't want to do the work that leads to the results. Am I right?
Yeah, and it takes
that
time,
all the
Bob.
time.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No,
It takes time.
it's hard work.
And
if it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
exactly. Here's another thing I've given some thought over the years on why people don't do it. It's because they're habituated. Habits are created over time.
Right.
And that startup phase, that first 1 to 3 years, you're like doing everything. You're making every decision.
And
You're
it's
opening
fun.
the door. You're closing.
Adrenaline.
You're hiring every person. You're in every sales call and meeting every rep. And, one, because you probably have to, because your pockets weren't that deep and you just have to. It's part of it. Two, because you actually want to build that information and knowledge so that you have it. But once you get to that point, you have a few people working with you, and part of the aligning and assigning of authority to others, it's hard to do because we're habituated into making all the decisions. And every habit, doesn't matter which habit you have, it's hard to break habits.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also ego. It feels good in the beginning. It's your business. And, and we've both been there, right?
Sure.
It feels so good, everybody's coming to you and you feel important and you're figuring it out and it feels really good. But then you sort of become addicted to that little ego, that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And you don't get past it. And then what I see happen, and you can reflect on this if you don't mind, but then what happens is that you become burned out. So you're habituated, it feels good, but then after a while, it's no longer good. And then you get to this place where you're burned out, where you resent when your people are texting you all hours of the night and day, even though you've empowered them to do that. And then that becomes that moment. So another model. I mean, we're the model guys, right? Yeah. So I created this model shop. It goes, when you start, you're a shopkeeper. Mm-hmm. And then the next phase is you're a retail pro. And then after that, you become entrepreneurs, artists. But really what we're talking about here is in between shopkeeper, where, what you were talking about. Yeah. You're new, it's exciting, it's, adrenaline, you think about it day and night, all those things. And then retail pro is when you start to have the skills so that you're not doing it all the time. But in between shopkeeper and retail pro, there's this danger zone. And the danger zone usually comes at about 2 years. Came at 2 years with me. I've had this conversation countless times. 2 years is when you have the oh crap moment. I didn't call it crap, but you have that moment where you realize that this fantasy of owning this super cool shoe store and everybody's going to come in and love me and they're never going to shop online is not true, right? And so when you get to that danger zone, you have a choice. And one of the choices is victimhood. And you see it all the time. I know you see it. I know I see it. People don't want to shop local. The people who are blaming their customers for not shopping local, that's a victimhood mentality. Sure. Blaming their vendors, blaming the economy, blaming politicians. Their lack of success is always somebody else's fault. And then on the flip side are the people who are going to make it to retail pro. And they say, well, wait a second. This was Bob and Steve Negen. It was like, okay, clearly we don't know what we're doing, but we better figure this thing out in a hurry because, well, so we were $12,000 in debt, and it was like, should we just quit and then just take out pay everybody back every month? It was like, oh no, it'll be a lot quicker to pay off $12,000. I mean, it'd be a lot quicker to learn how to be a good retailer than it would be to pay off $12,000. Of course, that was a lie we were telling ourselves too. You see that happen all the time, don't
Totally.
you?
I absolutely do.
So
And
you get to that place, you're like, oh man, unconscious incompetence, and then you have conscious incompetence when in the beginning you don't know what you don't know, but then there comes that shit moment where you go, oh, I know what I don't know, and I don't know a lot, so I better get to work and figure this out, or I'm in trouble.
I love when we start getting this wrapped around and we start building that structure that we're talking about and aligning and assigning accountabilities and having other people make the decision. I mean, I haven't made a hire in my shoe stores in probably 7 years, I don't
Yeah,
think. So, the only people I would hire are the two people that basically run the thing for me.
right.
Because we have a good culture and stuff, they've stayed, and that's great, all of that
Yeah,
kind of thing. But when they leave, because one day they probably will, I'm going to have to jump back in and be on board there. But the idea that I think we've been talking about here is, and I mentioned it earlier around the exit planning thing, is creating this value in your business, because it's one thing to create revenue and it's another thing to create profit. But when we look at creating the value, and for most small business owners, their business is one of the biggest things of value in their portfolio. And if all we're doing is getting one times profit, then okay. But if we don't put these sort of structures in place, Bob, if all of the stuff's in your head, if you're making every decision, then that's all you're going to get. But if you have these things running on rails, if you have it so that it's running on its own, and you're involved where you want to be and when you want to be and when you need to be, because you're still the business owner and you still need to be involved. But ultimately, think of the different multiples. So you take that profit. First of all, your business is going to be more profitable.
right,
Secondarily, you
right.
can add more multiples, which means you're going to get a lot more come the day that
Yeah,
you go to sell this business, because it is running the way it should be. And
right.
here's the other thing, getting back to that idea of being burnt out. Now that you've relieved yourself from all the reasons that you're burnt out and you're actually working in what I call your love it zone in your business,
Right,
do you actually even want to sell this business?
right,
Because it might be a good investment and you might just want to keep it.
right, right, right. That's what I call it. That third stage after a retail pro is, entrepreneur is artist, and it's not a very good term, but this idea that you've got it all dialed in, and now all of the things that you've learned, all of the wisdom that you've acquired,
Yeah,
skills and wisdom, they're different things,
for sure.
but all of a sudden you can apply them so many different places and ways with local nonprofits. One of the things that, I mean, Brilliance is just getting going and we're just starting to build it. But when we get Brilliance going to where it's sort of running the way that you're talking about, one of the things that I want to do is I want to, you know, start buying retail stores, to have a portfolio of retail stores. Because to your point, we know how to run retail businesses. And if I were to drop you into any retail business in the United States, Canada, anywhere in the world, you would be able to probably make it successful, right? Taking the skills you have. And this is why it frustrates me, not me personally, but I get frustrated for people who want to have success
Mm,
but then get stuck in that danger zone. Takes so much of that good stuff in a person, resilience and heart and courage. Takes so much to get that going, that it's so sad to see somebody have so much of whatever it takes to get into business, and then to see it lose momentum, and then they don't acquire what it takes to make their business successful.
yeah.
And
It's
it's just such a shame, because as we talked about, I really think that right now independent retail is ready for a renaissance. We have access to technology like we've never had before, right? I mean, technology has been commoditized and democratized. You can open a Shopify store. We were talking about our friend Nick McHenry at One Shop. Management One can help you manage your inventory. There are so many people around to support you. Brilliance is an educational platform. So there's no reason for an independent retailer to fail right now. If you fail as an independent retailer right now, it's because you're, to your point, stuck where you were. And that's a hard truth for some people to hear. Some people would rather be the victims, but I believe that in the bottom of my heart. And I believe that as somebody who cares so much about the success of independent retailers and the success of our community, independent retail store owners, and all of us. So
I love it,
there's my
Bob.
little rant.
That's a great place to end our episode here today. I appreciate
Okay,
your time,
good,
man.
good, wonderful.
We share the love for the
We
independent
do, we
retailers.
do. And
So
that's why I was so honored when you said I'm starting this. I don't know if you saw it, but like in 10 minutes, I was like,
yeah.
heck yeah, Pete, I'll be on your podcast.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to our next time together, Bob. Thanks again for being a part of the Footwear Retailer, and we'll look forward to chatting with you soon.
Well, thank you, Pete. I'm honored.